He wasn't my pick either. I inherited him, but we got rid of him, and it's a lucky thing I did. Otherwise, it would have been far.
Welcome back to the Combo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardul is here.
And I'm here as well, Fiorella.
And Oz is back there spinning on those ones and twos. Roar Media is in his house. Fam, that's short for house. How about that?
The cringe. Isn't it too early on your side of town for there to be this much cringe? Like, there hasn't been enough alcohol yet. It's Friday. Okay, like, warn us if you're gonna go cringe this early.
Okay. Hopefully I won't get like all max headroom in this thing, and I'll let you know. Who else is Captain Cringe? They called somebody else Captain Cringe. I can't remember who, but it was somebody like
I don't know, but you're in the contending spot for number one.
Oh, stop, fam. I am not that cringy. Oh, yeah. What's his name? Henry Cejudo. They call him cringe, I think. Right? Let me see.
I don't know who that is.
He's a wrestler.
Definitely.
How's that, Oz? Am I look good? He's an MMA fighter. I know I'm gorgeous. I'm always gorgeous. Fam, these are the shows I love to do today because there's so much stuff we got to get caught up on, stuff that people have been talking about. I've been able to analyze both stories. I kind of went into the whole, let me see what everybody else is kind of saying. So I got a good opinions about what we're going to be talking about today. Plus, I was able to look at both ends, right? Look at the mainstream media, look at the independent media, read the articles, look at the documents, get my own opinion. For me, I always like to kind of focus on how the people perceive things, how the mainstream are perceiving things. Because there's a lot of things that because it's important, because that's how a lot of people are moved. That's how the sheep are being pushed in some certain areas. And, if we can talk some truth over there, we can wake some of those sheep up or get them to realize things. And I think we've done ourselves justice. I think we've done karma justice. I think we've done something good. But listen, I felt as free as it can be when I broke the chains of team sports, when I was able to say, no matter what. And for so long, as a Catholic, you got to feel like you have to think in a certain way, right? But just part of the whole society, part of the whole team sports mentality that I was caught up with. Once I felt, that I can just speak my mind, I can think for myself, I can express myself, and I'm not going to be influenced by anybody else to be forced to think a certain way, the more free I've become, the more better my life has been. It's a sense of consciousness. And I believe that when we talk to some people, we can show them or give them the courage to think differently, to think for themselves. That's important.
Yeah. To a degree. Yeah.
Let's end the show like that on a good note. Thank you very much, guys. That's the Combo Couch. We're out.
That's it. Thanks for watching.
And it's Goodbye. A wrap. Bye.
No, we're going to talk about some things today because I'm not going to have the same opinion as a lot of people on this whole situation.
No, I think there's a lot of people who are going to share your anger and your firedness up that you are ready to go off on. I think there's going to be a lot of people thinking that way.
I think Americans are the most easily amnesiac. Like, it's like this. We weren't here before. This didn't happen before. The same strategies that we've used before didn't happen. Just because people say things doesn't mean, especially people running for the presidency, doesn't mean you should just buy them. And I think that there's a lot of that going on. But we'll get to that because we got to start with the Durham report.
Because the Durham report's important, right? Like the shame about
it is, but it's also, again, just like the Twitter files, just like a lot of things, it's not really telling us anything we didn't already know.
And
but
it's whitewashing shit too, by the way. It's not.
Absolutely.
Nobody's going to jail after this. Nobody's going to have to be accountable. And that's the big sin, fan. Because if you were to take this just on paper, the Durham report, which I thought was it talked about one of the most the highest acts of treason that could be committed is kind of like propagandizing a false narrative about the other nuclear power and putting you in a position where you can't talk about being friendly with the other country that the country that has as many nuclear weapons as we do. This to me was the ultimate sin in which, Hillary Clinton committed. And for people to be that rattled by Donald Trump that they would not only let the lies slide, but then start believing in these lies is another thing that just you need to get your head examined if you don't see the nuance in where the ends don't justify the means, right? I'm sorry. And that's what they all thought. At the end of the day, this is Donald Trump. He's a piece of shit. He's a criminal. We all know he's a criminal. We can jump aboard these lies. We can jump aboard this bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
That's also why people refuse to question the election. And even when they were presented with evidence about the election not being fair, they said, well, I don't care because I hate Trump so much that we're going to justify this unethical thing. And even if they did prove that the election was rigged, is what they said, it doesn't matter because Trump needs to go. And that mentality, that justification is, first of all, you're a person of no integrity, but it also just everything you do from there on is based on just a lie. It's based on cowardice. It's based on inability to face the truth. And so that was the mentality going into Hillary Clinton and that run with Bernie Sanders, and how that was an entire complete and total just a scenario that was manipulated, of course, against the American people. The American people chose, and they did not choose her in the primary, and they were gaslit to believe that we were all gaslit to believe that Hillary Clinton won. Mm-hmm. And then when we said she didn't win, then they invoked, tied the Sanders campaign to Russia, which is why this is like, we've come full circle now with all of this, because this is why the RFK Jr. stuff is really obnoxious to me, what I'm seeing, because it's like, I feel like we've been here before. Yes, Sanders didn't talk about Assange. Yes, Sanders didn't say certain things, but he did other things. And so so I feel like we're back in this circular path again, where Americans are being positioned to have hope in something that is just rotten from the core. We have to attack the core. And with the Durham report, it's one of those things that pretty much proves that all of these people that were gaslit and all these people that have now since turned into shit libs and pretty much, become that which they were supposedly fighting, including all the people, all the Krystal balls and all these people that are defending her just because, it's in their convenience to do so. It really exposes the people who have been screaming. This is almost 7 years that this has been going on. 8, if you really count the beginning of the Sanders movement in 2015. This is like a huge chunk of our lives here. Yeah. And they're still lying. They're still lying.
If you took this scandal that happened with Russiagate and you took the Durham report and you just pick it up and you put it side by side with Watergate, it makes Watergate, in my mind, look like a joke. You know what I'm saying? This is like talking about like all 3 presidents that we know. Well, I'm sorry, Hillary was never a president, but it came from Hillary Clinton's mouths, right? Like this is the whole thing where, or her bosses, we don't know, but obviously starting there, it affected Obama's cabinet and what he did and the whole Carter Page situation. And Joe Biden was in the room. So you're talking about all 3 of these people, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, with all ties to Russiagate, all ties, and by the way, when we talk about the whitewashing, 2 things that we can talk about right off the bat. Number one, Christopher Steele was never interviewed by Durham, which is, to me, it's just mind-blowing because that is, that's your source. That's your basis in which you're using this whole Russiagate narrative from. And you actually use this piece of crap that was started by Republicans at one point. It was so bad for him that they dropped it, that when the Hillary Clinton campaign picked it up and started running with it, and they used this lies to go get FISA warrants, to go out and, and everybody was calling Donald Trump crazy when they were saying they're spying on my campaign. They're listening to everything. Barack Obama, one of the worst presidents of all time. And by the way, China, you know what I'm saying? They're spying on us. This is just, if you took this and picked this up and you put this next to Watergate, it makes Watergate look like a joke. And, the fact that it got all these people involved, when you hit all these, when the intelligence apparatus is getting involved with domestic policy as well as just foreign policy, you have a government within a government over here. And the FBI, and the CIA and all these other groups, they played pretty much Yahtzee with our lives. And the media went right along with it. And you have still people, those shit libs of yesterday that you talked about, still defending this position, like they're still defending the COVID position. They're still defending these positions. And it just makes me think for a second. It's like, holy cow, where is your mind at that you can't be nuanced about this situation and understand the dangers of what went on with Russiagate?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and start and see, because
Start with Trump's reactions.
yeah, whatever you have first.
Because that's what people, they're going to use this as a vindication. This is going to be used as a campaign tool. He's been saying it was a hoax for God knows how long. Here's his vindication of sorts, except, fam, nobody's going to jail.
React to all this. And, sir, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Well, thank you, Rob.
So you've been ridiculed by the left for years now for calling investigations into you witch hunts. You specifically called the Russia collusion investigation a hoax. The Durham report vindicates you in a number of different ways. It destroys Russia collusion. It validates your firing of FBI Director James Comey. It validates your criticisms of late Senator John McCain, who pushed this dossier in Washington. It proves that you've been targeted by a very vicious machine.
Yeah. Well, that's been obvious to me for a long time. I fired Comey, and that was a very wise thing to do. I'm glad I fired him, and I fired him very early. And he wasn't my pick either. I inherited him, but we got rid of him, and it's a lucky thing I did. Otherwise, it would have been far worse. But I would tell you that it's a great vindication, and it feels good. And the report has been, wildly praised. I wish it could have come faster, but the detail that he went into, 308 pages, the detail is extraordinary. And all of these people, I guess you could call it treason. You could call it a lot of different things. But this should never be allowed to happen in our country again.
In a White House meeting, then CIA Director John Brennan briefed President Obama that Hillary Clinton had dreamed up a scheme to paint you as a Russian asset, as a distraction from her email disaster. Joe Biden, who's now the president, was at that briefing and has been lying about you for political gain ever since. If you get back into the White House, how do you disinfect a town as dirty as Washington, D.C.?
Well, there is a deep state, and there are a lot of problems, and I did a lot of firing, but it goes down very low when you look at it. This was really started by when she lost the election, which, according to some people, was was somewhat of a surprise. Okay, I didn't think it was a surprise because I'd go to rallies with like 55,000 people, and she'd have rallies that were not well attended at all. But they called this a big surprise, and they didn't know what to say. And they said, let's blame it on Russia. Somehow somebody came up with the idea, let's blame her loss on Russia. And when they blamed it on Russia, all of a sudden the fake news started picking it up, and it went longer and longer. And all of a sudden it was a week, and then 2 weeks, and then ended up going 2.5 years. They made the most of it, and it's a disgrace. But this was really an excuse for why she lost the election. She blamed it on Russia, and it's very sad, very, very bad for our country. Despite that, we did things that nobody thought were possible. The biggest tax cuts in history, rebuilt our military, biggest regulation cuts in history, Space Force. We did so much. By the way, strongest border ever, greatest economy ever. No inflation. We had the strongest border in the history of our country, and now you have the worst border in the history, maybe of the world, because I don't think anybody in the world has ever had a border like this. Yeah. It's a disaster. So despite this, we did so great, but it's, we had to fight our way through this.
I wanted to make sure that, he can, we played the whole video so you can hear us talking about the border shit. Once again, where the mindset goes, they, take a spot where they get vindicated, and this is the opposition of any side. And there, I'm saying, they get, listen to this, I was abused. You can see what happened. Russiagate. They planned against me. Oh, by the way, let's look at the border. The border's the problem now, and not really concentrating on American foreign policy as an issue. That was a caveat to what's going on there, fam. But I just want to get your thoughts on what the president said in a way, he is vindicated. And by the way, the two things that I mentioned that were really bad is, number one, that Christopher Steele never got interviewed, but also Biden wasn't mentioned in the report. This reporter here mentioned that Biden was in the room, but he didn't mention the fact that Biden wasn't in the Durham report. Everybody else that they mentioned that they threw under the bus is pretty much inconsequential at this point, right? It doesn't make a difference what's happening. Who gives a shit about Hillary Clinton? She's not running again. Andrew McCabe, all these other guys that were mentioned, you know what I'm saying, Comey, they're fucking out. They're gone. They're on with their new lives, writing books or having TV contracts, and they can talk about this shit and spin it any way they want. But your thoughts on that?
It's controlled release of information. This is what it is. That's all this is. I mean, yeah, you should be talking about it. Yeah, it's good that it came to light. But again, the same way I felt with the Twitter files, it's controlled release of information. You're not being told anything revelatory here. Maybe the mainstream is, with the mainstream admitting this. Yeah, but at the end of the day, what's going to happen is nothing, because as Pasta said, the real people that were the ones manipulating everything behind the scenes aren't going to get any sort of accountability. They're not going to be held accountable for anything. And so what you get is, in this news cycle that is like a goldfish news cycle, you're going to get some attention on this for a few days, and then it's going to go away and nothing is going to happen. And that's how they do this, because they have to admit now that, especially, and I've said this before, that the public is becoming so aware of things. And this is happening with COVID. This is happening with Russia, Ukraine. This is happening with pretty much every major issue that is in the public's interest and that the public has become keen to. So instead of letting that go out of hand, what they do is they say, okay, well, this was wrong. We admit this was wrong. And so they release things like this release of information. And then this has happened multiple times now. And so with the Durham report, that's what you're seeing. Okay, well, now Trump gets to be vindicated and use this for his campaign, while, liberals get to pretend this never happened and say, well, we don't want Donald Trump because he's this and that. They're going to use the same exact strategy. And of course, Trump obviously now has the upper hand, and then he gets to talk about things like the border and pretend that the economy was great under him, that there wasn't one of the largest transfer of wealth between the working class, from the working class into the elite, the deep state, the people that he says he's calling out. He had every opportunity to do something against the deep state, but he didn't. Now he's sort of washing his hands. Oh, he wasn't my first choice. Like, he put in a lot of the swamp into his cabinet, into his presidency. And now he's pretending he didn't do that. So people, of course, go out there and they say Trump, Trump, Trump. And meanwhile, this country is moving more towards, in respect, because I do have to kind of talk about it, towards the right, and not necessarily in a social aspect, but in an economic aspect, where the corporations control everything, where there's just there's so much deregulation, and neither party is much different, and everything just gets worse. So the only thing people fight about, though, are the social issues that don't really have a weight on the economics of people. So it's just kind of like a dead end for me, like looking, from here into the American political world.
Well, the thing that's drives me crazy too, as well, is that I was watching some mainstream media the other day too, as well. When we talk about, this whole Durham report, aside from maybe Jake Tapper, who we have, I think, a clip of, who says a little bit of stuff, the left-wing media, the Democratic established media, the MSNBCs and the CNNs, they're sticking by the same game plans, regardless of the fact that this came out and it exposed a lot of things. You know what they're mostly talking about on these channels? Trump taking the documents. That's the main focus of their shows. It's like the same Russiagate thing, which they had the smoking gun, or we got him, for years and years. Same thing. It's not even news anymore. It's just moved the sheep into their respective team. I mean, aside from the Trump docs, you hear him talking about the town hall. Once again, the same kind of language too, as well. He's the most despicable person whatsoever. They'll talk a little bit about George Santos, a little bit about Clarence Thomas, what I'm saying? They'll sprinkle that in there, the debt ceiling. But at the end of the day, it's still focused on the anti-Trump rhetoric of the same thing, the same plan. Oh, Russiagate, we got him. Trump Tower, we got him. To now the documents, we got him. We got him on the document. It's like, Jesus Christ, they're not going to stop. And they've completely just become this whole team red, team blue, go here, go there. No nuance, no independent thinking. That's it. We're not going to even talk about news. We're just going to give you hate porn on the other guy. The Republicans do the same thing too. And Fox, it's all this culture war shit that they want to just get you angry at the Democrats so that you can go and vote for Republicans. We are in a completely captured system at this point right now. Yeah. And no matter what, the independent media's got to do its best to break through, at least get some, just at least kind of, inject some different conversations, for crying out loud. Let's go to the video with of Ted Cruz over here too as well now.
Yeah.
So we can get perspectives from both sides.
The Durham report is stunning. As you know, I do every week a podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, 3 days a week. With the last podcast we did yesterday does a deep dive into the Durham report. The Durham report chronicles how there was no evidence of collusion. When the investigation began, not only that, the FBI and the Department of Justice both knew that the Steele dossier, which was a fabrication, it was a fiction, was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. It was political oppo, but it was an oppo smear with no basis in fact. And I got to say, it is heartbreaking as an alumnus of the Department of Justice to see DOJ, to see the FBI having been so politicized and weaponized, first under Barack Obama, then with hard partisans burrowed into career positions. Under Trump, they waged war against the Trump presidency. And now under Joe Biden, it is out in the open. And we have FBI whistleblowers coming forward one after the other, describing how today, under Joe Biden, they are treating the FBI as the political enforcement arm of the DNC.
Mr. Senator.
Okay, so what Republicans are acting like the Republicans have never treated the FBI as a political enforcement of their party as well. The FBI does whatever the establishment needs it to do. The CIA is, of course, an extension foreign policy wise of that. Look at the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, and how so many atrocities were committed under the guise of a war on terror. And so, I mean, this is just complete and total hypocrisy from the Republican side. And that's the reality. And that, of course, the liberals, were awful and are hypocrites. Like they're both hypocrites. That's the exact problem in the United States, is that you have two parties that are not really two parties. They're just mirror images of each other. And they just sit there and they constantly focus on these culture war issues. And meanwhile, the real issues when we're talking about foreign policy, when we're really talking about domestic policy that's going to help the working people of the United States, none of that gets addressed. I mean, they'll mention it here and there, like, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene will be against the war and the weapons of funding of Ukraine, but tomorrow they'll be for giving that money to Taiwan and to go and wage war against China. That's what it is. And people need to recognize that. Unfortunately, what I've been seeing is a lot of independent media start on pretending that the Republican Party is different than the Democratic Party. It's different in a very superfluous ways. It's not really different when it comes down to it, because it's
just their turn, fam. Right? It's the Republican, it's the Democrats' turn to act like the crazy batshit ones right now, and eventually we'll swing back to the Republicans. You mentioned it right in the beginning of your statement. You got to look at what. Remember with fucking W, for crying out loud. I mean, seriously, you want to act like that you guys didn't politicize and weaponize any of the intelligence apparatus? I mean, you did. You did it to get us into a fucking war. They're tied at the hip. You know what I'm saying? And you got one side, pointing to the Democrats, the other side acting like. Here's Hakeem Jeffries and Oz. I did put a clip into slide number 12. If we can get that up while we're looking at some of these up, eventually we'll get to that. But yeah, acting like it's a nothing burger, fam. Acting like the intelligence community apparatus, acting, weaponized for political gain. Of course he's going to say this because he's Hakeem Jeffries and he's going to protect his own side. But I didn't look into it. I mean, the fact that he's even saying he's not even looking into the shit, I can just tell you, it should tell the normies where the fuck we're at. Go ahead, play the Hakeem. Thank you, sir.
Do you have a reaction to the Durham report, and are you concerned that this could cause a lack of trust in the FBI moving forward?
Well, I haven't had the opportunity to closely review the Durham report, but as far as I can tell, this is another example, generally, of right-wing conservatives in terms of their reaction to it, trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. And this is what the extreme MAGA Republicans on the Judiciary Committee and on the Oversight Committee have been doing throughout the year.
I had to point out the fact that he's making sure that he's tribal as can be, right-wing MAGA people. That's all the media does nowadays. That's all our politicians do. They're in a complete go full ahead, making sure that it doesn't appear like there's any form of unity, except when it comes to bombing other countries or, the security state behind closed doors. People don't pay attention to policy anyways, fam. They don't watch C-SPAN. But on camera, when the lights, camera, action are going, it's complete that your neighbor is the enemy. It's all about the right-wingers. They're the awful ones. We're the virtuous ones, which a lot of these progressives and independent podcasters or independent media people, fam, are still kind of believing in, that they're the more virtuous one, that they're still the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree. And it's like turf wars at this point. That's it. And
yeah.
And I mean, I expect it from the Democrats right now because, they're there, but they'll be just as obnoxious once the Republicans come in. If the Republicans come in, the Democrats will just be crying for the next 4 years about how awful things are, completely ignoring how awful things are right now under a Democratic president. So it's just, I mean, this is why I can't take it over there. I mean, it's the same BS. And then you're supposed to have the anti-establishment media, but then a lot of them have been co-opted entirely. So that's exactly my problem here. Is it's just so hard to put up with that. I don't think you can fix that. I don't think you can vote your way out of it. This is why I'm so adamant on that. I don't think you can just rely on one person because it's so far rotten that it's going to require a lot of people. And I do think so many people are still propagandized so tuned out because they're so busy living their own lives, because this is the culture we've been bred to live in, a culture that's completely disassociated from the rest of the world. And that's only focused on me. And that culture has turned into what it is. And you can't blame China or China's TikToks or whatever for that. That's just the way we are as a society in the United States. That's not the way people are in other parts of the world. And I'll tell you that right now. It really isn't. It's any Western influenced city has more of that. But if you go outside of the Western influenced cities, you see a completely different mindset. And it's really, I think the world is seeing that for the first time. But, going back to the electoral bullshit that goes on in the United States, it just feels like a clown show in compared to the real problems the rest of the world are dealing with.
Yeah. And just to show you more of the tribal divide, I put this up here. Everybody had been talking about Jake Tapper, and what he'd said. But look what Occupy Democrats say on this, fam. This just shows you right here the mindset. There's no nuance. It's so shallow. It's so myopic. It's just throw it out there, give the confirmation bias, let the people repeat it. And that's why it was hard seeing a lot of our friends saying it's safe and effective. Like, you're really saying that with a straight face? You used to sleep on my couch. I'm going to disinfect that shit. Breaking after approximately a decade, the Durham report has finally dropped, fam. Shame on Jake Tapper for reporting that it's devastating to the FBI and does exonerate Donald Trump. This report is a nothing burger, fam. Bing, 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 bing. And nobody cares. RT, if you agree. You might as well play what Jake said, fam. But, look what the fucking tweet says itself. Everybody is in push people into the sheep flock tribal mode 100% right now. That's where we're at, fam.
Let's listen.
Regardless, the report is now here. It has dropped, and it might not have produced everything of what some Republicans hoped for. It is, regardless, devastating to the FBI, and to a degree, it does exonerate Donald Trump.
He said nothing. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as, I mean, is it detrimental? It's detrimental to the FBI in terms of the mainstream public that somehow still believes in the FBI. I don't really know that many people, even people who don't really tune into politics, that go around saying how valuable the FBI is, because they really don't. But in terms of exonerating Trump, yeah, it absolutely exonerates Trump. I mean, it makes Trump look like a victim, which has been happening a lot lately, which I don't think that's coincidental coming into 2024 at all. And if you do, I think that's quite naive. This is all, carefully released information. Is it a nothing burger? It's not a nothing burger. It's not a nothing burger in the sense that it's obviously true and all of these things did happen and they didn't want you to know it. But it is also things that a lot of people had already suspected and were gaslit into thinking were not true. And now you're just being confirmed by the same establishment that lied to you that this is true after all. So it's not a nothing burger, but it's also not necessarily, it's the tip of the iceberg. Okay.
But fam,
it's the tip of the iceberg.
Don't you feel that the real shame of this whole thing is that people are conditioned to think it's a nothing burger? It's the intelligence apparatus throwing their fucking, pretty much dictating what the people see, what they're propagandized from, how they were held hostage. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that they're throwing their sense into who we choose, not only on a foreign policy level, but domestically. I mean, this is supposed to be the most evil thing that could happen. This is the whole purpose of WikiLeaks, to expose this shit. And now people are conditioned to play team sports and think it is a nothing burger. To even put
but they either think it's a nothing burger or they think it's an everything burger, and it's neither. Do you see what I'm saying?
Like I said, if you would have put this on paper and just analyzed this against Watergate, this is pretty fucking big in my mind. You know what I'm saying? I know we expect all this shit, and that's why it's just like we've been saying it. We were watching it in real time and calling out the bullshit.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's just like, but it's
fuck.
But if it's an everything burger, that means that everything is going to be tied to this and only this from the Republican standpoint. If it's a nothing burger, it means it's going to be tied to nothing from the liberal standpoint. What it is, it's reality. And the reality it gets much worse, is my point. Like it is only like the beginning of what people didn't know. And I've talked to a lot of people, and they, non-political people in the United States, and they're not at all surprised that the government lies to them. They don't trust the government. This is the whole thing. They're like, okay, well, yeah, this is just the government lying to us again. So I don't think it's I mean, it is a big deal in terms of the fact that the government is continuously lying. They're trying to cover things up. That there is, it shows you how little democracy there is. Even if you're like a mainstream person, you see how little democracy there is. In my opinion, it's not really democracy hardly at all. It's just a facade of the illusion of democracy. But I don't think that it's getting out of the confines of the team sports in which it's in. That's the problem. It's not being talked about in outside of, like, in a way that should be talked about. Like, this is really bad. But do you know what else you don't believe your government has done? And this is just the beginning. And a lot of this is not surprising at all. And then there's so much that you need to look into now. And again, as with all of these things, I'm glad it's gotten out in front of the public. But at the same time, I also question the way it gets out, why it's getting out now, and who stands to benefit and lose from the information getting out. Because the information, they're not going to give you information from the top like this without them having carefully curated the information and carefully curated as to how it's going to be pushed out. And that's the truth. And this is why you don't just, you can't just accept things at face value coming in from the United States, because nothing comes like that. Everything is carefully controlled, manipulated, and pushed out in a certain way. This is because we are the beacon of PR in the United States. We are the beacon of knowing how to manipulate perception and public, depending on when you release information, how you release information, the language that is used when you release this information. Everything else is just a semblance of that narrative management.
And then where they pull you and take you down, when the way they twist that narrative, right, to get you where they want to go. You know, reality, fam, is the fact that we live in a society where our lawmakers that do an awful job can really expect to get a raise or a promotion or a higher position. And the people fucking believe it because why? They're fed fucking false elections. So they have a false perception of what's going on. And they think, oh, well, you know, if our neighbors think that Adam Schiff deserves to be a senator, then maybe it is right. Maybe I'm not thinking the right way. You can really fucking dupe the people with fugazi results. Here's our good friend Adam Schiff for brains on Alex Wagner. Is it Alex Wagner? Whatever Wagner. I don't know who's getting the show nowadays. They're just handing out the shows like Pez candy to these people on CNN and MSNBC and Fox and all these other crap channels. Here's Adam Schiff for brains, fam. Once again, downplaying the Durham report, but also to stoking the flames and the fuels of a civil war, of making sure you blame your MAGA neighbor Republican instead of the government, which keeps fucking you no matter who's in office, Republican or Democrat. Here we go.
A few hours ago, Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna filed a resolution calling for the expulsion of Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff from Congress over so-called revelations from special counsel John Durham's report. Congressman Luna alleges that Adam Schiff lied to the American people. He used his position on House Intelligence to push a lie that cost American taxpayers millions of dollars and abused the trust placed in him as chairman. The Durham report makes clear that the Russian collusion was a lie from day one, and Schiff knowingly perpetuated that lie for political gain. Joining us now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, member of the Judiciary Committee. Congressman Schiff, thanks so much for being here. I'll just get right to it. I mean, what is your response to this move to try and expel you from the House of Representatives?
Well, as you said, the Durham investigation, and again, this was an investigation Donald Trump demanded, an investigation of the investigators. Bill Barr was only happy enough to comply by the appointment of Durham. Durham spends 4 years trying to prove this deep state conspiracy theory that Trump kept, telling his base was going to be proven, and people like Brennan and Pelosi and Schiff and others were going to be prosecuted. The whole thing, of course, was a big bust. 4 years, hundreds of interviews, and nothing to show but 2 failed cases in which not the defendants who were acquitted, but Durham, the prosecutor, I think, was criticized by the judge. And so their response to this big disappointment for Trump and for the MAGA crowd, let's go after Adam Schiff. Let's go after the person they most view as standing up for the rule of law, as standing up against Trump and MAGA world, leading the first impeachment, participating in the January 6th committee. That's what this is about. And Alex, I'm convinced when this dark chapter of our history is written, it will reflect that those Republican members who lack the courage to stand up to the most unethical president in U.S. history, Donald Trump, consoled themselves by attacking those who did. And that's what this is really about.
Are you surprised that Speaker McCarthy is invoking your name? I mean, he is not technically part of the MAGA wing of the party, although he certainly does help them find a home in the Republican conference. But he is the Speaker of the House and is supposed to be above some of this petty political mudslinging. Did his comments surprise you?
You know, nothing he does really surprises me. This is the same guy that gave surveillance video to Tucker Carlson. He will do whatever Trump wants him to do, and I'm sure Trump glories in McCarthy and House Republicans going after me. This is all about satisfying his boss in Mar-a-Lago and satisfying the Fox-watching crowd that loves Donald Trump. So it doesn't surprise me. McCarthy's also made it clear he wants to do everything he can to stop me from being elected to the Senate, where he knows I would be even more effective in pushing back against these efforts to tear down the rule of law. So this is, I think, part of what is at work here.
Let's go
Do you
into
think
this.
that there's, I'm not going to ask
go
if you
into
think
this.
it's a
Hold on.
coincidence because it's clearly not, but this is the day that there was a move to expel George Santos, the serial fabulist, from Congress. That failed. But do you think that this is a naked play to basically seek an eye for an eye, if you will? If George Santos is going to get kicked out, then so is Adam Schiff?
I think that a lot of what's going on is what we've seen many times in the past, which is when Democrats do something for the right reason, they use the precedent to do something for the wrong reason and attempt to draw some kind of a false equivalence about it. But, you know, the confluence of efforts to expel this serial fabricator, George Santos, this person who's just been indicted, who's admitted guilt to a foreign crime, to distract attention from that, and in the wake of the added disappointment of the Durham report, let's go after Adam Schiff. Let's, you know, please the MAGA crowd and send a message to anyone else that stands up to Donald Trump and the extreme MAGA world. We will go after you the way we're going after Adam Schiff.
Right there.
You know, I think, you know, Congressman Schiff, I think a lot of people are very deep.
Jesus, Pasta.
Didn't you like the way George Santos, we go after George Santos, but me, we're not allowed to. And by the way, Adam Schiff is not just a piece of shit for what he did for Russiagate and the impeachment and the January 6th shit. He is a warmonger that rushes off to war. I mean, the whole Libyan situation, there's an interview with him in Al Jazeera. If you go look it up and find it, Adam Schiff, Al Jazeera. Fam, they couldn't bomb Libya fast enough for Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff was complaining that the Clinton cabinet at the time, which was Secretary of State, was dragging their feet on bombing Libya and getting involved over there. So it just shows you he's an anti-Russia, warmongering piece of crap. And this is something when you saw the squad out there with their little kind of whole situation with the, Corey Bush and going up and talking to Adam Schiff and like everything's okay and stuff. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And like I said, this is the reality is that you could suck at your job as a lawmaker in the United States and you could expect a promotion, fam. You could expect a better position. Isn't that great?
Yeah, there was no need to listen to all that. Like, it was just like torturous.
Yes.
That was complete torture. Like, it's just even noticing how this woman talks. Like, she's not an anchor of any sort. She's literally instigating everything, every question for Adam Schiff to say what he wants to say. It's just nauseating. It's just they're so irrelevant too. They're just so irrelevant to what's actually happening. I don't know what else to say about that. Complete and total. Yeah, and Adam Schiff is a war criminal. He's a warmonger, but so is everybody else on the other end too, pretty much. So this is just their moment to go at each other.
Adam Schiff, Adam Schiff for brains. Fam, what do we got here? What you got?
I just wanted to highlight the Black Agenda Report article for people to read on the Durham report, and just let me see if I can pull it up because I wanted to show some aspects of it.
Who wrote it?
Hold on. I'm trying to pull it up right now. Oh, I can't pull it up because I'm in. Does it work if I'm here? I haven't done this in a while, Oz, from the slides, so I'm sorry. Let me see.
Who wrote this article, by the way?
Ajamu.
Ajamu. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Fuck
so,
yeah.
Okay, so where does he say? Okay. Okay, so I'll just read the first three paragraphs. 6 years and millions of dollars later, the Durham report released on May 15th confirmed once again what a few of us had the nerve to argue before all of the reports and stories that subsequently emerged, that Russiagate was the most massive fraud ever perpetrated on the U.S. public by a section of the capitalist rulers, and represented a maturing of a form of U.S. neo-fascism unique to this historical moment. The public may have forgotten that during the Trump administration, U.S. Attorney General Bob Barr assigned John H. Durham as a special counsel to review the FBI's counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign. The Durham report, as it is being referred to in the media, corroborated many of the conclusions reached by the Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report in 2019. Among the findings in the Howitz report was evidence suggesting that the FBI made what was referred to as the basic, fundamental, and serious errors in applying for a warrant to surveil the Trump campaign. However, the Durham report went further, suggesting that the U.S. Justice Department and FBI failed to uphold their mission when they launched their initial investigation of former President Donald Trump. What the report alluded to, and what is important to remind the public, is that the investigation by the FBI of the Trump campaign constituted a full-blown counterintelligence campaign. Dubbed Crossfire Hurricane, the investigation of a presidential contender from one of two major parties allowed to conduct national presidential campaigns without overbearing legal constraints, was truly unprecedented. And then they said, based on the review of the Crossfire Hurricane and related intelligence activities, we conclude that the department and the FBI failed to uphold their mission of strict fidelity to the law. So in other words, the FBI operated beyond the boundaries of the law. And so then he goes on to talk about that. But I mean, it's just, I like the way that was pointed out, because it does point out the reason why the Durham report is an important revelation, in spite of the fact that, as he mentions in the beginning, a lot of us already knew and had the audacity to call this out a long time. It just pretty much cements that there. It adds to the list of things that a lot of independent media like ourselves were able to see from the beginning, and really took a lot of insults. I mean, I think I posted not long ago how, you know, I think it was 2017. I was getting called a Russian bot back then for simply saying that Russiagate was a gigantic, complete and total lie. And you know, a lot those of us that were saying that at that moment were literally told that we were just all this stuff, which is pretty funny.
This is something I want to point out this last video, because at the end of the day, remember when people go, oh, well, you're a leftist. What makes you a leftist, an old school leftist and stuff? And, you know, it used to be a good, you know, disdain for the intelligence apparatus. Now, the leftists, they love like Brennan and Clapper and all these other guys and whatnot. But I think this guy sums it up, this particular whistleblower right here that's coming on. This is one of the FBI whistleblowers, Garrett O'Boyle. And he just breaks it down on why. And this is something that Julian Assange had handed us, you know, the ability to see what's going on with your government behind your back, because they're not being transparent. They should be transparent. But anybody who speaks of you know, exposing the deep state, which is a bunch of unelected officials, like the intelligence apparatus, you know, swaying elections or using their office for political gain. That's what a deep state is. It's all these unelected officials that have been there from quite some time, and they're the ones who are manipulating the levers of government and who gets in and who has power. Take a look at this whistleblower, what he says here, fam. This is knock your socks off.
All of the hardships you've gone through. If one of your really good friends, your former colleagues, came to you and said, I have this thing that is being covered up, and I think the American people need to know about it, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them first to pray about it, long and hard. And I would tell them I could take it to Congress for them, or I could put them in touch with Congress, but I would advise them not to do it.
So you would legitimately try to protect one of your colleagues from doing what you have done?
Absolutely.
And how do you think that solves being able to shine light on corruption, weaponization, any kind of misconduct that exists with the American people?
It doesn't solve it. But the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. And we are all examples of that.
I can't think of a more sobering way to end a hearing. I yield back.
They'll crush you, fam. They'll kill you. And that goes for all of us right now on this stream, running on this side of the aisle, or any citizen journalist that wants to expose stuff. We're a story away from putting something out and having them try to crush us for telling the truth. And they're getting more consent because people have bought into it. They've bought into the whole fact that they're doing it for my team and not the other team. And that's something really narcissistic about those individuals, because they think that they want to be on the more virtuous, glorious side, that they're doing the right thing, that the ends justify the means. And in that, the ends will never justify the means. If the truth blows it up, then so be it. The truth will blow it up. We deserve to see the truth. We deserve to stand by the truth. And it's a shame what's coming on in this country right now, because not only is it just happening on a regular basis in which the intelligence community can ruin individual citizens' lives, it's being cheered on. And that really sucks, because the whole thing is now you might be okay with who they're going after now, but that same type of mechanism will swing the other way and then eventually come for you.
Yep.
There's nuance here that's being ignored, and it's a shame.
Yep. Yeah. So, I guess going along those same lines, right? Anderson Cooper.
Oh, we're going to go right into the second section. I can't read the super raise today because I don't have it up on my computer, because if I run it, I start turning it into max headroom. That's the problem.
Maybe we can get them at the end.
We'll do everything. We'll do all the super raise and everything at the end. So we'll hold on to it now, fam. Section. It's a short one, right? I wanted the Adam Schiff video to play last to kind of roll into it. You want to go back and watch more Adam Schiff real quick, fam?
No.
Okay. We don't have to. All right. My bad. But Adam Schiff, the way he was talking about MAGA Republicans and kind of make this look like this is that he didn't do anything wrong. The fact that he's going for a higher position despite being wrong about so many things, it's just terrible. This is what you get when you don't have fair elections. But another divisive asshole, and we'll play about 2 minutes and 20 seconds into this video, fam. Anderson Cooper took to the stage or the TV screens after the town hall. And you know me personally, fam, and really this is one of my big pet peeves. Anybody who kind of goes after the citizens and pits the citizens against each other, they're on my shit radar. I don't like that at all. If you're not looking up, then you're not looking in the right spot. We need to be looking at what the rulers, the elite class, or whatever you want to call them, the predator class, whatever name you want to give these people who are dictating what goes on with our lives, who are pulling the strings, whose number one weapon is to make sure that we're divided. If you're not looking at them and you're looking at your neighbor, screw you. Even if you're not conscious that you're doing it. And I know that this motherfucker right here, Anderson Cooper, excuse my French mom for cursing, but this piece of crap, what he does right here, it just shows me the way they're doing their news, fam, the way they're concentrating on the Trump documents, that they're going to use the same plan they've been using for quite some time. This is what John Kiriakou talked about. They're not smart. They're dumb. And they can only run the same playbook. Well, they're going to run it again. And that's to divide the people. Go ahead and play some Anderson Cooper, and then we'll get fam's reaction.
Good evening. Before we begin with tonight's broadcast, I want to say something about what we witnessed at last night's town hall. Many of you have expressed deep anger and disappointment. Many of you are upset that someone who attempted to destroy our democracy was invited to sit on a stage in front of a crowd of Republican voters to answer questions, and predictably continued to spew lie after lie after lie. And I get it. It was disturbing. It was disturbing to see and hear that person refer to a black law enforcement officer as a thug, an adjective he used many times to describe black men, and called Caitlin Collins, the moderator, nasty, which is what he calls any woman who stands up to him. It was disturbing to hear him speak so highly of QAnon conspirators and insurrectionists who assaulted police officers in our democracy on January 6th. And it was awful to hear him spread ridiculous lies about the election. And it was certainly disturbing to hear that audience, young and old, our fellow citizens, people who love their kids and go to church, laugh and applaud his lies and his continued defamation of a woman who, according to a jury of his peers, he sexually abused and defamed. As good a job as Caitlin Collins did trying to fact-check him, it is impossible to fact-check fully because he lies so shamelessly. Now, many of you think CNN shouldn't have given him any platform to speak, and I understand the anger about that, giving him the audience, the time, I get that. But this is what I also get. The man you were so disturbed to see and hear from last night, that man is the front runner for the Republican nomination for president. And according to polling, no other Republican is even close. That man you were so upset to hear from last night, he may be president of the United States in less than 2 years. And that audience that upset you, that's a sampling of about half the country. They are your family members, your neighbors, and they are voting. And many said they're voting for him. Now, maybe you haven't been paying attention to him since he left office. Maybe you've been enjoying not hearing from him, thinking it can't happen again. Some investigation is going to stop him. Well, it hasn't so far. So if last night showed anything, it showed it can happen again. It is happening again. He hasn't changed, and he is running hard. You have every right to be outraged today and angry and never watch this network again. But do you think staying in your silo and only listening to people you agree with is going to make that person go away? If we all only listen to those we agree with, it may actually do the opposite. If lies are allowed to go unchecked, as imperfect as our ability to check them is on a stage in real time, those lies continue and those lies spread.
There you go. Bam, if you had a bell to hit for every single fucking buzzword he said, destroy our democracy, bing, 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 he's a racist and a thug, bing, 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 he's a misogynist and a womanizer, bing, 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 they're talking about the Q-tard shit, bing, 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 once again, they're destroying our democracy, bing, 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 the election lies, bing, 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 we got a fact check, bing, 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 bing. I mean, the bell would have been breaking left and right, you know what I'm saying? The platforming, I know we shouldn't have given him the microphone, bing, 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 bing. All that
he didn't
stuff
say that,
makes
though.
me. Well, he says, I know some of
Yeah.
you are mad that we allowed that person to come on and speak. So he did kind of mention that, like, why do we even give him a platform? And a lot of people were saying, shame on you, CNN, for platforming him. But the thing that really, really pissed me off about that, and why I wanted to bring it to the show today, family, is when he talked about 50% of the audience. We can no longer be silent. What do we have to do, Jake? We can't just hang in our own. 50% of your audience is despicable,
Anderson,
lying,
not Jake,
terrible,
yeah.
right? Anderson? Sorry. I mean, fam, he pretty much called for civil war.
I didn't take it that way. I didn't take it that way at all. No, I didn't. I didn't take it that way.
For civil war, the 50% of the audience? Go ahead, fam.
No, I took it as he was calling for people to talk to their neighbors, because he even said at the end, we can't only talk to our echo chamber, blah, blah, blah. I took it as him saying,
Even if there's them saying despicable and shit?
He wasn't calling them the people you thought despicable are 50% of the country. I mean, which he's right. 50% of the country are Trump supporters. So 50% of the country is going to support the Republican nominee. I don't think he actually said any of. I don't think I must have heard something completely different, because I didn't see him calling for civil war at all. I saw him saying you need to convince your family members basically not to vote for Donald Trump, basically to talk to them and not ignore them and be in your echo chamber, which I thought was kind of surprising coming from him. That's why when he said, "Oh, I think some of you." Didn't want to give him a platform and you're upset. He was just doing PR for CNN because so many people of their viewers were upset that Trump, did all this stuff. I think he was just cleaning up the propaganda. I mean, like he's like their prized possession. He's a Vanderbilt, it's this whole thing. I mean, the guy's a hack for sure, but I just don't think he was calling for that. I think he was calling for people to interfere for their stupid family members or their friends that were like pro-Trumpers. I didn't hear him.
Would you
call
send
for
somebody
civil war.
to go speak to somebody else and basing it on their lying no matter what? You're really not telling people to open up interesting dialogue that can really kind of build bridges and understanding. When you want to send somebody to speak to somebody to confront them about something or to persuade them, the first thing you have to persuade them to do is that you have to persuade them, number one, the person that you're speaking to is not despicable. He's not a liar. He's not your enemy. And number two, that you got to listen to his point of view before he will even open.
Yeah, he's not saying that.
He was kind of like, these people are lying, and these people are your neighbors. You know what I'm saying? And you have to confront them on lies. I guess maybe I misheard it wrong, but that's what I heard.
I didn't think it was that. I don't think he was being like
smearing and shaming technique. I thought that I heard so. No.
That's not what I heard, but yeah.
Either way, it's part of the show.
What do you think? What did you hear? Did you what?
Yeah, Oz, why don't you put? You're always TV.
No.
Come on, let's hear.
No, I want to hear what Oz has to say. Don't speak for Oz. Oz has his own voice.
Honestly, when Anderson Cooper starts talking, I kind of like zone out. But what I did
That's a great answer.
Well, yeah. I mean, we hear it's catered. You know, like I listen intently to people like Glenn and you guys and Kim and some of the other ones. But some of these outright shills and corporate entities gassing about the same rhetoric that's coming straight out of the Biden campaign, if not Alphabet and the rest of them. So, yeah, but to your point, Fee, I agree with what Fee's saying, but Pasta, you've nailed the passion behind it. They're trying to social condition all of us on the regular in this cycle, just like they've done every single time. And I will just end by saying, look at what they're doing with Medicare for All with Bernie and Jayapal now. I mean, they're doing the same things over and over again. So this was just to poison Trump as much as they could. So that's what, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm glad that you agree with me, Oz. We'll move on to the next section. Finally, I got one on the wow. Marked down today, May 19th. Oz breaks with Team Fee ranks to go Team Pasta.
This is why he doesn't, though, because then you cry about it. All right.
Bam, before we get to the next section, let me put this on here. I want to start off this next section, even though you put it in there, because I want to hand it off to you. But I want to hand it off to you properly, because I don't know if you know this, fam. I'm a newspaper guy, right? And when I travel, I grab the newspaper, and I grab the mainstream newspaper because I want to see how they're moving the sheep in which direction. You can always appreciate the New York Post. Now, fam, just to let you know, the New York Post was always about sports. If you were an intellectual, you got the New York Times. But if you wanted to look about sports and you had your news a little bit more like the National Enquirer, that's why they got the same style. You can even see, fam, right in here in the top. Look at this over here, fam. The nice Ukrainian flags and the United States American flag, all in for it. I want to direct you all to page 14 really quickly, too, because I talked about this earlier, and we'll get into this. Let's put a hold on this, right? So the first part over here says what? COVID deadly U.S. toll. We'll save that for the last section. We'll get into that. We'll come back to that because we'll talk about what Krystal is doing in her responsibilities.
That's the next section.
That's the next section. But fam, this section, look how they title this stuff. They got the Ukrainian flag. Look how they put this shit in here. Kicking Vlad brass. Like instead of kicking Vlad ass. And they're literally fucking bragging, fam, about killing Russian military officers. 2 Russian military commanders were killed in eastern Ukraine, Moscow's Ministry of Defense said Sunday as Kiev, I can't even see, it's so dark in here, vowed. I mean, they're just going right into it. They're bragging, kicking Vlad. They're bragging about killing Russian officers, fam. I mean, this shit is, you can't make this shit up. This is the G.I. Joe mentality we have. That's why you got a fucking Ukrainian flag right there on the cover and kicking Vlad brass. Newspaper guy out. We'll get back to it later, fam.
Yeah. No
Aren't you glad I'm a
there,
newspaper
fam.
guy like Fidel?
No.
I can go get my cigar if you want.
No, fam. But I had a little bit of the cigar, by the way.
No, you did not.
I did.
You had a little cigar?
A little bit, yeah.
Fam, we're going section 4, the Russian one.
No, we're going section 3.
Oh, we're going back to 4 after?
4 is the last section, Pasta.
I thought, yeah, but you had it in front of 3. I thought that's why I went kicking Vlad brass. You want to go to this one? Okay.
Yeah. The last section is very short.
Yeah, but that's why I was doing the kicking Vlad brass. I'll go back to the COVID part of it. Anyways, all right, let's get into it. So, section 3. Go ahead, fam.
No, you started this section, so
all right.
Go ahead.
Well, let's get into the interview. Obviously, RFK and Krystal Ball had a little bit of exchange. I would like to say that Sagar was involved, but he didn't do anything except stay in the bleachers and kind of go, yeah, yeah. Like he didn't want to get involved in this one. You know what I'm saying? I think he'd rather opt out because it's a hard position to defend.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you have if you want to jump in and start talking about this. I can tell you my opinions about what's going on. Because I do think that this is more to it than just the way the exchange went back and forth. I have mentioned this before, that I think that what Krystal is doing is something very interesting. And this is some of us who are kind of a little excited about the RFK campaign. When it comes to the COVID narrative, we haven't seen a lot of these people kind of square off on each other. And what Krystal was doing was having to carry the fucking flag or the narrative that the COVID vaccine was safe and effective, that the COVID protocols were necessary, that if you're still not, like some people we know saying, hey, if you're not paying attention to COVID and not wearing your mask outside, or if you don't have your kids vaccinated, then you're not doing what you need to do as part of being part of society and doing your part, that they're still the virtuous ones. They don't want to admit any of the new data that they were wrong. That's what she had to do for the first time that I've got to see. And I'm very curious to see how this follows up, when people follow up with talking about still trying to hold their position that, I don't want to look at certain people's freaking Twitters, because I know they're going to still sit there and say what that said right here. And to go back to the newspaper guy, fam, I want to show you on that same page, page 14, COVID deadly U.S. toll. And once again, I have a hard time with the light here, but it pretty much says that almost 1.3 million Americans, all right, the coronavirus pandemic, while officially over, has killed a staggering 80,000 plus New Yorkers, and a total of 1.13 million Americans, impacting virtually every facet of our lives. Fam, they're still talking about dying from COVID, not dying with COVID. They still want to hold this narrative. That is the shit-lived narrative that they're going to hold on, that even though the pandemic is over, it's still going on. And they were right to force mandates. They were right to stand behind this stuff. That's, to me, what's being missed in this whole situation. And this is one of the positive things about the RFK campaign, is that we're going to have more of these COVID conversations. You know what I'm saying? So that's the way I kind of view this thing when I looked at this thing as a whole, analyzing what had taken place. And then we can go, obviously, into the interview itself and your opinions and everything else. But that's what I got from this whole situation.
So the people who bought the COVID narrative still buy the COVID narrative, and the people who didn't buy the COVID narrative still don't buy it. So yeah, I'm glad these conversations are coming out, but this conversation with Krystal Ball does nobody a benefit, because she's literally lying, and she literally just uses cheap tactics to insult him. And I guess he benefits from people seeing that she is being, ridiculous, literally offering no evidence for the points she makes and all of that. But the people who have been defending people like Krystal Ball continue to defend her. The people who have been defending people like RFK continue to defend him and stand by supporting him. A lot of people support him primarily because of the COVID. Let's just get that out of the way. The primary reason they support him is because of the way he has been with COVID, the way his history, not just with COVID, but in general, with Children's Network, Defense Fund, and the way he has spoken out about certain issues, right? However, like that, I don't really see how he benefits from having a conversation with somebody so dumb and daft and stupid. And I further don't see any benefit to anybody, but especially the public, when he legitimizes people like Krystal Ball and Sagar, because you're legitimizing them when they literally have just insulted you, and people, and of course people were like, oh, he's so nice, he's just above it. That's the same shit that we were told when it came to Biden, actually, before, that Biden's nicer. And then especially when it came to Bernie Sanders. When it came to Bernie Sanders, that he was so nice, that he was just above it. He wasn't. No, like, and of course people are going to say, Fiorella, he's not Bernie Sanders. He spoke about Assange. He did this. It's like, I could say the same thing about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was better with Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders was better over here, over there, whatever. Like the fact of the matter is, I see his campaign moving in a direction where they're placating to the establishment. They're putting people from the establishment in their campaign. that they're having people, they say they're challenging the establishment, and in many ways they are by putting these conversations out, simultaneously placating to the establishment. Why? And this is Bernie Sanders did the same thing. I was there when they were marking media more than any other media, more than independent media, for CNN, MSNBC. Why? They have the largest audiences. So again, it's that sort of thing. Well, we need to get eyes over here. We need to get the rest of the people to see our campaign. We need to make our campaign mainstream. The thing is, it's in itself, it pretty much just corrupts the campaign itself. And so it's this really weird situation that I don't know why, but every single time they think it's going to be different, and it's not different at all. And if you think that his campaign hasn't already been infiltrated by people, you're really naive, because it absolutely has. And this just shows me that whoever is influencing him or managing him is just doing a terrible job. You don't go and say these are two well-informed people when they are the absolute opposite of well-informed. You're legitimizing people who should be exposed rather than legitimized. And in spite of all the good things he has going for him, some of the things he has said regarding the CIA, some of the things he has said regarding the establishment, his record with the establishment, I just, and of course, that's not even my number one. My number one is that we don't have fair elections. And he did talk about mentioning that, which I thought was a plus compared to everybody else, but he was also not full on saying that the election was stolen. And people are going to say he can't say that because then this and that will happen. Again, I've heard that before. So all of these things, I feel like deja vu right now. Different candidate, different time, but a lot of the same strategies being used. So I do want to hear what Krystal said, because in spite of everything I just said about what pissed me off about his reaction, the reason I was pissed off was because she's such a hack and using the same tired insults of anti-vax, when, by the way, the woman who officiated her wedding, Marianne Williamson, has a long, like evident stance against vaccines. Okay, she was like the hippie, hooky woman that people made fun of in 2016 because of her stance on vaccines. Yeah. So it's absolutely the peak hypocrisy for Krystal to treat him this way when she never has ever treated Marianne Williamson that way. Okay, and neither have a lot of the same people that are now supporting Marianne Williamson and dismissing RFK as a quack and saying, he's this anti-vaxxer and all of that. Like they're completely justifying one and not the other. And I think that's wrong, regardless of how I feel about his campaign. Regardless, I think it's wrong. And this is why it angers me more that he went and legitimized it, because it wasn't a good interview. It was absolutely, it was horrible.
It was bad, but the one thing that I really was picking up from that whole situation, and it doesn't bother me. I understand where you're coming from. It doesn't bother me for him to play the nice guy route in this particular situation, because people go back
because
and watch.
You're nice. I feel like you would do something like that.
I just think that people are going to be like, he's going to encourage more conversations like this. In other words, people, if he did go out and go guns a-blazing, right, and he did go and say, these people are idiots, they shouldn't have had an interview with me, but saying those things, that's going to maybe deter him from getting other interviews. And the interview itself, so? I do believe so.
Why does he need interviews with liberals that are just going to mock him, though? Why are we placating to the people?
I think that he didn't mock him. I think she did a horrible job, and I think a lot of people want these COVID conversations to take place. And when he says what he said to me, which was so great in that interview, was he goes, what you're doing right now is you're just parroting what the industry says. You're parroting what Big Pharma wants out there. He did a very calm, confident, and that's the way a lot of people feel. They know what's been going on, that these people have been simply parroting what big tech, Big Pharma talking points were, because it's an industry captured and controlled, and they have the media, and they have all the, they sponsor Fox, MSNBC. That's these things that haven't been said. And the fact that he's pushing that out there and putting that out there, a lot of people, because this is the one area I think, fam, normies, when I mean people who are not politically engaged, can be persuaded or getting involved in politics. were from this COVID situation. There were a lot of people who were never involved in politics, but after COVID came along, they're like, oh shit, what the hell is going on? What is our government doing? How are they captured? Oh, now they're not only captured by big pharma, they're captured by big tech. We see that. Oh, now they're captured by the military industrial complex. This is the one area where a lot of normies could be moved. They're very kind of like, they're still kind of like questioning the fact, why did I get this vaccine? Why did I listen to my doctor? Should I have done that? This is an area where we'll get more heads involved and more people involved, and they'll be paying attention simply for these conversations right
Who
here.
watches Breaking Points, though?
Yeah.
Who watches Breaking Points?
Fam, a lot of shit libs do. There's maybe there's some independents who do watch it, but it's not the fact that they watch it. It's that the clips that will come out of it, and then they'll see these clips and they'll see these interviews, and therefore they'll catch on. And I think that, what are you raising your hands for over there?
I think he would have come out better and stronger if he would have said, he doesn't have to berate the girl, okay? He doesn't have to go and say, you're a despicable. He doesn't have to go Donald Trump on her, okay? But he could have said, I felt like this interview, I was positioned in a certain way I did not appreciate, but thank you for the interview. Otherwise, you don't have to say these are two well-informed people. That is a lie. You're lying to me. You're lying to my face, and you're insulting my intelligence, because I know that these people are the least informed people that are. I mean, they've got not the least informed, because to a degree they're smart enough to take advantage and manipulate of the fact that people watch them, because people do watch them. They're mainstream light.
Yeah. The messaging has to get better. I agree, fam. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying the CIA is filled with nothing but good people, it should have been like, I'm sure there's some good people within the CIA, but and these are issues and stuff we'll be able to talk to his campaign manager.
I think the time for this type of campaign where you play the nice guy and you all this is long gone. People don't want that. This is one of the reasons why Trump won. I think why he got so popular, at least. I'm not going to say he won, but he got so popular, and he's built because he literally didn't do that.
Yeah, but Trump is out there still fucking bragging about Operation Warp Speed. He's still bragging about what's going on.
But it doesn't matter. He has tricked 50% of the population.
I think that Kennedy is just as effective when he says, you know what you're doing right now is you're parroting big pharma talking points. I think that's effective. I think that's going right to the cause of what's going on, the way people put out this narrative, the big pharma talking points that I just read in the New York Post. I think that's effective. I agree, fam, that his messaging has got to get better.
It might be effective to a certain age group, but it's not effective to people below a certain age group. I'll tell you that right now. You don't gain points with younger people by literally speaking it's platitudes is what he's doing. Why a liberal does platitudes better than you? Why are you trying to outdo a liberal's platitudes better than they are? I just think, and it's just so, it just signals to
saying
me
that big
what else are you going to say?
Is a platitude, though.
What?
Saying that?
No, I'm talking about the tweet.
You're talking about when he says that part is going to be like, I agree. That's going to be. I think though it's still more effective of what took place in the actual interview when he does talk back and talk about big pharma talking points. Should we play some of the video real quick?
Yeah, let's play the video.
Can you go full screen on it too, Oz? I'm going to use the little podcasters room and run right back. Not me, you bonehead. Not me. You went back to Team Fee already.
So let me ask you about vaccines. This is an area where you and I have significant differences. And, just to level with you on this, like a lot of what you say I really respond to. I think you're a very genuine person. But the across the board, whether you want to call it vaccine skepticism or anti-vax advocacy, which has been a central part of what you've been up to for the past number of years, for me personally, it's an issue, and it's a real sort of red line. And I know I'm not alone in that, especially running in a Democratic primary. There are going to be other millions of people like me who have similar concerns. So how do you win them over? What's your message to people who think like I do?
Well, but just tell me where you think I got it wrong.
Well, I think you get it wrong when you draw a correlation between the rise of things like autism and the introduction of vaccines when there isn't hard scientific evidence tying those things together.
How do you know? Let me ask you this. How do you know there's not hard scientific evidence?
Well, because the one major study that purported to show that was retracted, and the scientist who conducted it was, had to...
Now, what you're doing now,
basically
Krystal,
fraudulently created. Listen,
no.
Hold on.
You're
but
raising this issue.
I don't want to get in a debate with you about this because you've spent your life pulling out this study. Now, I will tell you. Let me just tell you.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Let me just tell you. I've listened to hours of interviews with you with an open mind, and I'm not persuaded. Now, maybe I'm wrong. That's possible. I'll hold it out there. People can watch. I thought Megyn Kelly did a phenomenal interview with you that went through all these claims piece by piece by piece. I really encourage people to watch that whole exchange because we won't be able to do it justice here in the 5 minutes we have left. But there are going to be people like me who aren't persuaded and who see this as an issue, and the fact that it's been such a central part of your advocacy means I can't just sort of put it to the side and say, oh, well, I'll just ignore, this piece that's been really important to you in your life. So you're running in a Democratic primary. You have a lot of people who feel even more strongly than me who think that, Dr. Fauci is a hero and all of these things. How are you going to persuade them? How are you going to reach them? And what is your message to them?
Well, first of all, I'm not leading with, my opinions about vaccines. What I say to people is show me where I got it wrong. Show me where I got my science wrong. I've written books about this. I wrote a book about the link between thimerosal and autism that has, I think, 450 distilled scientific studies that confirm and validate that hypothesis, and 1,400 references. And if I got something wrong, show me where it is.
But I think people have shown you where things are wrong, but you don't want to hear it. Is because I've seen, numerous fact checks. Dr. Vinay Prasad, who we, really respect on the COVID vaccine. He went through your interview with All In. He did a fact check. I mean, it's not...
And I did a fact check of Vinay, and you should read that.
I will take a look at it. But I don't think that it's fair to say nobody has ever pointed out anything that's been wrong.
Well, here's what people complain about what I say. And again, I'm not leading on this issue, so people can either take it or leave it. But if you want to, what you just said about me, that I'm sort of hard-headed and stubborn and just won't give in, you're wrong about that. If somebody shows me where I'm wrong, I'm going to correct it. And, we have probably the most robust fact-checking operation now in North America. I have 350 PhD scientists and MD physicians on, CHD's advisory board, including until recently Luc Montagnier, who won the Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus. Chris Portier, who's the head of the National Toxicity Program at NIH, formerly, probably the top toxicologist in America. And if I were saying things that were scientifically unsound, those people would not stay with us. What I would say to you is, show me where I got it wrong. Show me a study where I got it wrong, and I will change my position. Science is fluid. It's not an embarrassment to me if there's a new scientific study that I haven't seen that comes out and says I'm wrong. That's what you're supposed to do with science. But what I'm saying to you, nobody has done that. If Vinay Prasad, when he did his piece, if he showed me science that was valid, I would say I would change my position.
If we got the two of you together,
read my response to him.
So you say this isn't what you're leading with, but I just have to say, as someone who is watching your candidacy closely and is aware of the advocacy you've been doing and the organization that you are involved with, it's hard for me to believe this won't be an important part of how you govern. So I think that's the most important piece for people to get, who you have to accept there are going to be people like me who just don't agree with you on this. You certainly understand that there are many who do think that the vaccines that we have are more beneficial than harmful, that, got their kids vaccinated and are happy for that decision. So how is this going to impact the way that you govern, or does it not at all?
I mean, I'm going to govern according to, what evidence-based medicine. That's the way.
Let me give a specific question. If there's another pandemic, in the last pandemic, former President Trump, something we gave him a lot of credit for, he launched Operation Warp Speed. They had a whole of government approach. They used the mRNA technology that was developed using, U.S. taxpayer dollars to get a vaccine out to the population as quickly as possible. How would your approach have differed?
My approach would have been a science-based approach.
Which means what?
Which means a medicine-based approach, the approach that has been used and approved for decades. You look first at therapeutics that are off the shelf, and you look at the efficacy of those. I mean, what I would have done if I was in power then, I would have created an information grid, because now we have this internet that is supposed to benefit us and has become instead an instrument for, totalitarian control. But let's use it for something good. Let's link all 15 million scientists, doctors, frontline physicians all over the world, and find out what they're doing to treat this new respiratory virus, and find out what they're saying is working and not working, and then test that with science, and then turn it instantaneously into protocols and recommendations for other scientists.
So would a vaccine development be part of that or no?
Well, I don't think the vaccine worked. I think, if you think it worked, then try to explain to me the countries that were unvaccinated did much better than our
many of those countries, because there are a lot of different factors in various countries. So a lot of those countries, as you pointed out before,
why do we have the highest death rate in the world by far?
I think there are a lot of factors that may go into that. One of them is the fact that we are disproportionately obese as a society. We have the negative health outcomes that you've been talking about. We don't go outside as much as countries, say in Africa. I mean, there are a lot of different factors that may play into that. But I will say, did the vaccines work in the way they were initially promised to prevent spread? No, I don't think so, especially once you got to later variants. But we have a lot of data that shows that in terms of reducing severe hospitalization and death, the vaccines were really important. And maybe there was a cost-benefit analysis.
I want to see that data. I know that's what the industry says.
There is lots of data, and not just from here, from around the world, that shows the vaccine doses, and not just our vaccines, but ones that were created all around the world, reduce severe hospitalization and death. So in that way, yes, I do very much believe that they work.
And let me tell you something. What I believe you're doing now is you're parroting what the public health agencies have been saying, but they do not have a scientific basis for that. And I have another book out that you should look at called Died Suddenly, that goes through all the Johns Hopkins data, which is the dashboard data that everybody used, and shows exactly what happened when first of all, the vaccine, the Case Western study that is probably the largest, most recent, shows that.
I think some of those points that were hidden when she said about the fact that, is my microphone on good, that she said that there are a lot of people like me. There are a lot of people who still think that Fauci is a hero. There's a lot of people who still think that vaccinating their kids are great. Then she contradicts herself completely when she starts talking about other vaccines outside of the vaccines in the United States, when you were just bragging about the mRNA technology that was funded by the people, because that's the main thing, it was funded by us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's very hard not to contradict yourself. It's very hard to ignore that data from Johns Hopkins. It's very hard to ignore the data that came in from Israel and stuff like that. So when I see these conversations, and also too as well, fam, I think I've said before, the greatest sin of the COVID era was not even so much, I believe, and I don't want to downplay anything, any injuries from the vaccine or injuries from the COVID-19 itself. I would never want to downplay that stuff. Is awful, and it's terrible what people had to go through. But the fact is that they suppressed speech from doctors who did want to speak out, who did want to talk about other therapeutics. They stopped the scientific approach. They stopped the medical approach. And when he talked about creating that community of other scientists where they can come and bring their opinions to the table, that is so important. The suppression of speech that it took place during the COVID era is unprecedented. It's awful. And it's one of the greatest things that happened. So when he even mentioned to that about having that approach, I think a lot of people wanted to hear that. It's like, why didn't we just have this approach? Why didn't we listen to other people? Why did we shut down voices and call them quacks of people like a Dr. McCullough or anybody else, Dr. Cole, and try to pull their licenses? That is something huge, and I think that is something that he is bringing to the table where a lot of people who are normally not plugged into the political world will gravitate to and then get more involved to what's going on. That's why I think that this candidacy, this run for president, even though I don't have pipe dreams on this, fam, if you're expecting him to win, and when he says shit like I expect to win, he's being naive, because there is a laundry list of things I don't like about RFK, and I can point them out. His mindset towards Cuba, I want to know where it's at. What he's talking about at the border and shit, and how he's not recognizing the actual cause of migration and not talking about that, and buying into the whole everybody's talking about the border. When he does call Vladimir Putin a thug and a gangster, that doesn't bother me because I like Vladimir Putin. I don't imagine that place that talk taking place 40 years ago, when you know if you're going to be the president, you're going to have to talk to other world leaders. Why would you do that stuff and put a bad stain on your number one negotiating tool when it comes to getting rid of nukes? So I don't like that shit. The fact that he hasn't acknowledged the DNC lawsuit right now, right? You know what I'm saying? The one that we're talking about that explains where the Democratic Party said plain and simple, there's no such thing as a Democrat. We can go to the back room full of cigar smoke and pick whoever we want. Now, Bernie Sanders wasn't part of that campaign. But are you going to be part of that campaign this time? Are you going to make sure that our votes count? Are you going to make sure that our elections are good? He says you want to talk about the process, but still, there are many things we don't like. But the fact that he is talking about the COVID narrative, and also his talks when it comes to NATO, when it comes to war, so much better than any other candidate in the race right now. There's blind spots, no doubt. But these are the reasons why I think that the conversations he's going to bring to the table are so important. Even though they only come around once every 4 years, 3.5 years for him, because nobody pays attention to politics until there's an election going. I know that sucks, but that's the battlefield we're working on. And I think throughout that that particular, I wish he could be a little bit more pushing back vocally and sound a little bit more, but he's not that person. We know about RFK, but those are the reasons I think the candidacy and his campaign for president are important.
Yeah. So first of all, going back to Krystal Ball's performance there, because that's what it was. It was a performance. And so she literally uses the same tire tactics of, well, some people are going to, aren't convinced. And as he said later on towards the end, what we heard is she is repeating pretty much everything that she's been told. She's not giving any sort of evidence whatsoever. Anytime he said, what study? Oh, that one study. Which study? Oh, yeah, that one. She won't bring specifics because she literally has no idea what she's talking about. So my issue is why it's a waste of time to talk to somebody like that. Everything he was saying regarding COVID and all the studies he was mentioning, that went over her head. Literally, all of that, she had no idea what he was talking about. He could be talking to more intelligent people that know exactly what he's talking about. This is why I don't see him having to placate to these people, because these people are literally in another planet. They have no idea what he's talking about. They have zero clue as to what he's talking about. They only are like robots repeating, yes, but vaccines are safe and effective, blah, blah, blah. That's why, again, I go back to that comment, which I'll read in a second, that he later on makes, because it's like everything he was saying was legitimate in terms of the COVID discussion. And she literally, it just went over her head like this, because what she's talking about. So
I think a lot of
to sway. I'm not done.
Right?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Like, and then instead of responding like in a way that I think it could have looked better for him, all she did was just try to make him look like this anti-vaxxer quack that is some sort of, lunatic. And her audience, a lot of her audience was, I think there's a misconception here. People say a lot of her audience was mad at her. I think more so a lot of the people who tuned in to watch that were mad. I think the people who believe in Krystal and Breaking Points and all these people are still, because I was reading all the comments, still look to them as like, oh yes, he's a total quack. He relates vaccines with autism. I think those people are still in those camps. I don't think you're convincing liberals because they're so brainwashed beyond repair. I think you might convince a few people, and I'm glad that he's getting out there. As I said, I'm glad he's running to sort of offset this the usuals, like the Bernie-esque Marianne that we have and all that bullshit. But I still don't think that you're going to convince people in that camp because they are so far gone about that. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, again, Krystal Ball literally got her wedding officiated by Marianne fucking Williamson. And here she is pretending that she cares so much about vaccines when she, first of all, knows nothing about them, knows nothing about any of the studies that he's talking about, none of this stuff. She hasn't followed any of this. But on top of that, her Biffle, her best friend, Marianne, again, has literally had very similar stances on vaccines. And then you have her friends, which will show some of her friends, Krystal's friends and Marianne's friends, who are literally doing access journalism, go and defend her, saying, well, RFK said it was good. There was a good interview. So, and it's just like, wait a minute, but you're being biased because you're friends with a presidential candidate and you're going to these weddings with this presidential candidate and you're pretending as a journalist, Krystal, that you're giving a fair interview to a presidential candidate when one presidential candidate is your best friend. It just doesn't work that way. There's no way you can remove that bias. So it's a total shit show. And she looks like a moron in the eyes of anybody that knows anything about COVID. She looks like a total moron. But in the eyes of the people who look at her and her show and all of them with googly eyes, then, oh, well, Krystal, like, yeah, you got him, Krystal, like, because she didn't let him speak. And so it's just kind of like, it's just so enraging to see these people really waste a great potential for a great conversation about COVID and everything. And I guess I get more angry because the questions you could ask and the level that you could get to is so wasted with people like Krystal Ball. So there's no need to legitimize them, which is why I go back to that point. You're legitimizing complete waste of space that are doing nothing for you.
I don't think, and what I was I'm sorry for trying to interrupt you. When we were talking about how she thinks, like I said, I think a lot of still shit libs think that way, right? Or progressives that still want to carry that torch. It's the people in the middle who will see that him dissecting, and taking apart a person who tried to carry this narrative. There's a lot of people when it comes to COVID, I think just they're calling bullshit. The more they understand stuff, the more they learn stuff, the more they see stuff like this. Because now you have, like, what's been going on is that the left, the establishment left, has been able to stay in their own echo chamber, have been able to stay free of any hard questioning. They say this all the time. Can you imagine Fauci in a room with McCullough having to go back and forth? They never let that happen. They would allow them just to stay in their own echo chamber. And the most pushback he ever got was 60 seconds twice from Rand Paul, who, it was decent, but didn't go for the jugular. Could have pointed out so many other stuff, the financial ties that Fauci had, which has never been corrected. And this is a guy who wrote a whole book on how the industry works and people like Fauci take advantage of it. So I don't think that trying to convince the left or the people who want to carry this flag of safe and effective and still think that's going to be okay you're not going to change them. It's the people in the middle who will see these clips, who will be like, all right, now we're seeing more of this. They lied to us. They bullshit us. I wish I never put that shit in my system. That's what you're going to see from this. I think a lot of that.
Okay.
What do we have next for clips there, Osland? Okay. I think this is this particular clip over here, FAM2 as well, which we have talked about.
You put that in there, yeah.
I did. But when we talk about what's going to happen at the end when Bernie Sanders had eventually, Tulsi Gabbard all endorsed Joe Biden, you know what I'm saying? I still don't want to be effective and stuff like this, but I think he's dancing around certain things.
Yeah, he said different things in other interviews.
Yeah,
so he's definitely dancing around.
Yeah.
My final question for you is, do you plan to support whoever the Democratic nominee is? And do you have any intention of running third party if you're run in the Democratic primary?
I plan on winning the Democratic primaries.
Okay, but
Democratic nomination.
You know, they're rigging things. They're not going to allow debates. It's going to make it very difficult for you. So if something happens and you don't succeed, what then?
I do not have a plan B.
No plan B?
No plan.
And do you plan to endorse, if Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democratic
I doubt
nominee?
if I would endorse anybody who's supporting the war. I think that's what my,
So you could endorse Trump then?
I don't see that happening.
You would never endorse President Trump?
I don't. I think we have so many differences in style and approach that I probably would never end up there.
All right. Well, sir, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You got to get out of here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krystal. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Bam. I'm probably going to vote third party. Sorry.
It's not easy for some people, really. It just takes some guy to, turn them, to get them sucked into the same endless cycle where we don't have fair elections and we have accolades of the CIA left and right and accolades of Krystal Ball and the whole Putin shit. Like it's just like, to me, it's already a mess. I honestly want no part of any of it. I do think he is raising some points about COVID, which is great. But what year is it? Oh, it's 2023. Yeah, now it's okay to criticize COVID and talk about COVID, right?
He was criticizing it out of the gate, though. The vaccine.
I knew you were going to say that. So
come on. I mean, let's
I
be
wasn't
fair
done
when
with
it
my
comes
statement.
to,
You keep I wasn't done with my statement. Like I knew you were going to say that because I wasn't fucking done with my statement. Yeah, I know he was one of the people that criticized COVID from the start. He literally wrote a fucking book, but again, that doesn't make you great enough on foreign policy to really, run with the presidency. And again, Pasta, to me, it just comes down to the fact that we don't have fair elections at all whatsoever. And people are just so enamored by the fact that there's somebody that's running that's not Joe Biden or some Marianne Williamson, and they want hope. The American people want hope. They want somebody to pin their hopes on. And again, as soon as this election's over, everybody goes back to sleep and so on and so forth. Nothing gets done. And that's the reality. That's why it's so frustrating seeing people, RFK 2024. Okay, well, what are you doing to make sure our elections aren't rigged? What are you doing to make sure that the system itself is changed? As you mentioned, he's not talking about the lawsuit. He's not talking about any of that stuff. I mean, he did mention the fact that our elections may not be fair, which is why Krystal Ball there mocked him and said, with rigging and all, like she was mocking him. So it's just, it's ridiculous to me that I just would not run his campaign like that, the way it's being run. It comes off it comes off repetitive. It's like we've done this before. We've played the nice card. We've done this. That's not what's needed in this moment right now. It really isn't. And this is exactly what I'm talking about here. Great interview with two very well-informed guests.
Yeah.
Really?
I'm going to break your thumbs on get a chance to reach through that goddamn screen.
It was not a great interview, dude. She literally gaslit you the whole time. It was not a great interview. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that as a candidate. Really. And like I said, I think he's by far the best candidate running. I definitely think he's, if somebody tried to tell me if you don't vote for someone, I'll kill you and had a gun to my head, would I vote for him? Probably. But I'm not going to participate in a farce, whether it's him or anybody else running, when we don't have a fair election system and people like Krystal Ball get to gaslight you and people like what's his face get to gaslight you and pretend that we do. And people, if we just vote harder, maybe we can fix. No, even if we did, by the way, even if we did somehow have a fair election and he went into the presidency, that's where the work even begins. Because it's just so rotten. The whole system is so rotten and people just don't want to do the work. They don't want to be like the French. They don't want to be like people in the global South, like the Pakistanis who are literally having like a real revolt. They do have a great leader, yeah, but they're having a revolt like in the streets. They're literally in the streets every day. We don't do that in the United States. We just want to wait until every 4 years, go vote and say, wear a shirt that says so-and-so 2024 and pretend that that's our duty and that's all we do. That's what's really infuriating. And, you know, I would hope that changes, but it's definitely not going to change with him. It's not going to change with anybody because it has to come from the American public. So, yeah. And the other thing, Pasta, is I had to point this out. She says, Katie Halper says, here's how Kennedy himself described the interview with Krystal Ball and Sager. Great, with two very well-informed guests. If you think he was treated unfairly, maybe it's you. Okay, so that's why I had such a huge problem with what he tweeted, because when he tweeted that, he legitimized the interview as a good interview. He legitimized their treatment of him, their mocking of him and everything that he was saying about COVID, which is everything he said about that was 100% true. Everything. And he barely went at the tip of the iceberg because Krystal and Sager know nothing about the subject and already look like morons. So when you do that, what does that do to the promoters of Krystal and Sager and the journalistic access class, the elite progressives? It gives them the impetus to put something like what Katie Halper put. Oh, so if you thought he was treated unfairly, that's your problem. No, it's not. No, see, that's exactly why. Because now it's our problem. It's not the fact that it actually was unfair treatment. It's not the fact that he's actually just saying, and when you are running for presidency, what you tweet and stuff fucking matters. It matters. So that's got to change by all accounts. The things he has been saying on Twitter, whoever's running it, whatever, I don't know. That's got to change. And I had to promote Jackie here, Jackie Page, dirtbag leftist. Why would you say Krystal Ball is well-informed when she's clearly wrong about vaccines? She's still advocating giving the vax to kids. She kept talking over you. I'm puzzled as to why you are complimenting her for doing so. And that's exactly, the reaction that people who, understand what's going on should have, because it's like, wait a minute, she's treating you like shit. Why are you legitimizing that, right? And again, he didn't have to do that. That's all. I'm done.
You got your next tweet too, though, as well. And
you can show it. I already said it. I already said it. You absolutely do not have to do that. You absolutely did not have to do that.
Yeah, I can understand I can understand the framing, and I wish the messaging would be better. I will mention that to Mr. Kucinich, but you have a lot of these people still just carrying the same fucking sentiment. And for me, it was like also who liked the tweet. It's like, oh, geez, man, come on, dude. Oh yeah, he's taking it out of there. You are? All right, cool.
Okay, so there's a couple things there. And to all the people saying he's just being classy and being nice, no, I'm sorry. You don't get, that's been there, done that. Like you don't have to be insulting or berating, but you don't have to do that. It's not about having thick skin. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about thinking that this strategy is going to get you more voters when it actually doesn't work. That's the centrist strategy. It doesn't work, literally does not work. We've seen it fail the last 2 election cycles, guys. It does not work.
You're
taking out the Vanguard one?
No. Put the Vanguard tweet up real quick. Yeah. I'm sorry, but a journalist pushing back forcefully on vaccines cause autism conspiracy theorist who's running for president shouldn't be controversial. So, this is part of that clan. They're still going to try to, no matter what, just call him a quack, call him a conspiracy theorist. You have no freaking leg to stand on. Yeah. And I'd like to see, once again, I challenged one of these guys, I can't remember their names, when they started talking shit about ivermectin. I said, well, let's have a conversation about it. They don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? They heard from somebody who seems important that ivermectin sucks. So I have to repeat it despite not knowing the facts and understanding what's going on. And I'm going to still push that sentiment that, I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. I don't know about you. I'm doing my part. You're the evil asshole who's not.
Who's Matthew Ho? Who liked this tweet? Oh, okay. That's your Green Party, by the way, which is why our good friend is fighting the Green Party, because they're all a bunch of quacks, like actual quacks, not like
Matthew Ho, who was supposed to speak at Rage Against the War Machine, pulled out, but you can understand why, and he's liking that tweet right over there.
Yeah. Anti-vaxxers. Oh my gosh. By Marianne Williamson, again, who they took a pic with at Krystal Ball's wedding, where all the people who are coming to Krystal Ball's defense somehow happen. Like, it's the same people. That is so coincidental, by the way. It's such coincidence that that's happening. The same people that called us anti-vaxxers, that wouldn't have us on their shows because we were anti-vaxxers. It's all that same people of elite, the elite progressive from the Northeast, right? All those same people are defending. Is it surprising? No, it's not surprising. But that's, again, why you don't legitimize that. You literally say, you were wrong. You don't know anything about this, but thank you for the interview. I'm glad I got to say what I had to say. And that's it. But you don't have to give a tongue bath in any way, shape, or form. And I had to bring this up, fam. The last bit of this, I had to bring this up because I'm not going to let this go. Jeffrey Epstein. So now, everybody went after, what's his name? Noam Chomsky, right?
Yeah.
For his connections to Epstein, as you should, correct? Mm-hmm. As you should. Absolutely. Even if he is, your favorite socialist or whatever, right? Like, absolutely go after Noam. But
I don't think Nam was on the island. Do you, fam?
I don't think so. I think he's quite old, fam. So. I think he might have had a heart attack if he had been. But not saying that I wish that would have happened, but I'm just saying. But anyway, so fam, let's read this little thing over here, because I think it's important that we point this out. Now, I want to ask, are you worried at all about this? Do you does this concern you? Do you think this is just a nothing burger? What is it? So Whitney Webb, right, wrote this in One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 2. And this is what she said regarding Kennedy's 2 flights on the Lolita Express. In an interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for this book, he stated that Ghislaine Maxwell's entry into his family's social network in the early 1990s was likely through his former wife, Mary Richardson. Per Kennedy, Richardson seemed to have known Maxwell through Richardson's former boyfriend, Carlos Maroblion. There is considerable supporting evidence for this claim. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also stated that the 2 occasions he was on Epstein's plane had been arranged by Ghislaine Maxwell and Mary Richardson. In one instance, the flight was part of a pre-planned fossil hunting trip to South Dakota, which he believed had been Ghislaine's idea, as Epstein had appeared to only have attended grudgingly. On that trip, Kennedy remembered that Epstein did not mingle with us and hardly spoke and did not participate in the fossil hunt. The other fight came about after Richardson accepted an offer from Ghislaine to fly Richardson and her family from New York to Palm Beach in order to visit Ethel Kennedy, his mother. Kennedy said he and Mary were accompanied by Kennedy's 2 older children on each flight. On one of the flights, a return trip to New York from South Dakota, Epstein clearly had a problem with Kennedy's rambunctious children. And halfway back to New York, Epstein, ordered the pilot to put down at Midway Field in Chicago. He got off the plane. He made his way home. A blonde was waiting for him at the plane side in Chicago. Kennedy remembered that Ghislaine was in silent tears after Epstein's abrupt departure. So what do you think of that, Pasta?
Listen, my concerns for Epstein are always for RFK have always been where he gets some of his money from the NGOs and the works he does, right? So he's pushing out against, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all these other things when it comes to big pharma, but some of the stuff that he, has his money tied up to when it comes to his green work, they're questionable when the money comes from. I can see with the work that Ghislaine Maxwell did that she wanted to have a close kind of connection with RFK. She was the save the water, save the whales kind of woman, Ghislaine. She did all out of that work. So this is not anything, this particular right here, these connections they don't kind of alarm me. But, you know, if this is just two, what else could have happened? Could there have been other trips or whatnot? But I mean, it doesn't seem like Epstein was a fan of RFK. And RFK was a fan of Epstein either. I mean, I can understand where the Ghislaine and Robert Kennedy, their paths would cross. So those are areas of concern, but this is not too concerning to me right now. If I heard more information on it, maybe, who knows? No.
Would it be more concerning if the candidate was like Joe Biden or somebody else?
What do you mean?
Like if it wasn't RFK, somebody that you like, would you still have the same reaction that it's like nothing? I mean, I don't know. Like, I just ask yourself that question. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
I don't know. I don't like to. I very rarely like to play the games. If this was somebody else, this would have never ever happened. If these were somebody else, that would have never ever happened. I just don't know if it's another candidate. You know, it all depends on the circumstances. I mean, Biden is just a child sniffing pedophile who I believe is, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, so him anywhere, I would kind of, you know, question if he was anywhere close to Epstein. You know? Yeah,
I do think because I'm not like, you know, I don't know. I think I think more people would question this if it was like some a neoliberal they didn't like, but because it's Kennedy, and it does seem, though, honestly, it does seem that the connect, like, I don't see enough of like a direct praise by him or anything, but he was on the plane. He was on Epstein's planes. He was in his circle, not saying he was in his inner circle. And of course, that should be concern to anybody that has the same concern with any other politician or any people on the list. And I'm glad that he was able to speak to Whitney about this. And I'm glad that happened. And I'm glad that there was some honesty about that. So that's good that he was honest about it. But everybody has been now at this point, you know, like I said, Noam Chomsky admitted. So, but if people are going after Noam Chomsky, and they're not going after Kennedy, it just seems a little bit.
I'm not going after Chomsky with his relationship to Epstein. From what I understood, there might have been financial ties there, and that would be very concerning. Anytime you take money, that's when you want to go, oh, you know what I'm saying? So if those financial, if we saw money that RF Kennedy took for his work from Epstein, I'd be very, very, very concerned about that.
Right.
You know, but I mean, fam, I can, like, you know, the thing is too, as well, as like me personally, for instance, I don't believe in Pizzagate. I believe Pizzagate is taking the certain same players that are involved with certain things and using it to spin on off to make it look outrageous, to provide cover for the actual things that have happened, maybe in Haiti and other countries and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's like, you know, I can kind of decipher between the two and say, this is right, this is wrong, just because a lot of the people who were involved and named in Pizzagate were, I believe, part of Epstein's network and part of the whole child trafficking pedophile cases. Doesn't mean that they were necessarily involved in the way that Pizzagate explains it. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I kind of like, I can separate the situations when it comes to something like this. Just because he was involved in Epstein's, you know, he was on his plane, doesn't mean he was involved deeply in going to the island and trafficking children. Same thing with Noam Chomsky. You know what I'm saying? I think there's a lot of people who came into you know, Epstein's inner circle that you have to question. I mean, Bill Gates took money from Epstein. That's a big question there. Very, very different than, you know, Donald Trump riding on the plane, RFK riding on the plane. I'm sure there's some other people who rode on this plane who never went to the island, never participated, or getting thrown into that lumped into that same group, because that's what people do. They want to weaponize it, you know, for political gain. That's what they do for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should I put my hat back on for the last section?
No, let me go through it first, because we've been going for a while, fam. And, and I just like, I gotta go. But let me see here. Yeah, so that was that section. We could go on for a while, but just real quick, guys, Zelensky crashed the Arab League summit. Okay, and it's a meeting between Arab nations, talking about, you know, economics, foreign policy. And one of the reasons it's such a big deal that the League of Arab Nations is happening is because Syria has recently rejoined the Arab League, okay? And that was a big deal. Why? Because, well, Syria has been the outcast for a long time. And because Syria has been the outcast, that it will allow the United States to weaponize all of the lies about Syria and Assad and the chemical attacks. But recently we've seen this emerging Arab, like pan-Arabism, right? And that pan-Arabism has basically means Saudi Arabia making ties with Syria, Saudi Arabia talking to Iran, they're reopening embassies, and so on and so forth. So that's a big deal. And so Zelensky decided to crash this joint, and he flew in a French plane from Poland, okay? And he got to Saudi Arabia, to Jeddah, and he just crashed this whole event. Now people are like, well, he probably had to be invited, which is true. He probably did have to somehow be allowed in. And a lot of people were like, why did they allow him in? This cokehead, this idiot. Well, if they don't allow him in, it's just going to cause them more problems than what it's worth. I mean, at this point, like it's just better that they allow him in, to make him feel like he's important, because that's all he wants to do is feel like he's important. And they allowed him in, and then he said his piece, and he said a couple things, and he basically used his time to blame Russia and to talk about how Ukraine needs weapons and stuff. So I have a couple videos I want to show, but he said that he claims he wants to strengthen ties between Ukraine and the Arab world. And on my tweet, I said Zelensky forgot that Ukraine supplied 5,000 plus soldiers for Operation Iraqi Freedom, right? For the war, the US-led invasion of Iraq. Not Zelensky, but Ukraine, and he forgets that. And yeah, it's just an idiocy at this point. He's just a joke, and a lot of people are like, guess where Zelensky is not? He's not in Ukraine, right? He's not in Ukraine. So we can show the first video, and then we'll go on to the second one.
We do not have that much artillery, but we do stay strong because we do have truth on our side. Moreover, we are pushing the occupiers out of our land. Anyone who defends his native land from invaders, and anyone who defends children of his nation from enslavement, every such warrior is on the path of justice. And I'm proud to represent such warriors and the entire Ukrainian people. Ukrainians has never chosen the war. Our troops didn't go to other lands. We do not engage in annexations and plunder of other nations' resources, but we will never submit to any foreigners or colonizers. That's why we fight, and I'm sure all your nations will understand this, our main emotion. And I'm also sure all your nations will understand the main call I want to leave here in Jeddah, a noble call to all of you to help protect our people, including Ukrainian Muslim community.
Okay.
Jesus,
so,
man. Jesus. Jesus Christmas. Oh my God, dude. Jesus. What really in 2014 when your fucking puppet government took over and they started bombing people in the Donbass, you didn't go to other places and start killing people and shit. And then you just tie up all these fucking lies that they're still going forth. You know, the Ukrainian situation's a lot like the fucking COVID situation, fam. People just don't want to admit they're wrong. It might take a half a day's worth of studies to find that everything you need to know to understand that Ukraine didn't have any sovereignty after 2014.
We do not have that much artillery, but we do stay strong because we do.
Why does he sound like a bad audition for Batman? Like, like I don't know, man.
It's the Coke, Pasta. It's the coke. It's ruining his vocal cords.
It has.
It's not good. And the other thing he said was he blamed Russians for killing. He said Russians are attacking the Muslim group in they're the number one. What exactly did he say? I'm gonna pull it up.
He gave shitlibs bait to use. Oh, Putin's also anti-Muslim.
He said the Crimean Tatars specifically, which are the Muslim Russians, right?
Yeah.
Are persecuted by Russia. And he had to put that in there because they want to go after Crimea. And then, so then I pointed out that the ones who have been going after the Crimean Tatar are the Ukrainian neo-Nazis. Because they in countless videos, this is just one video, but in countless videos, what they do is they cut pork in front of the Quran, or they mock them with like pigs, and obviously, that's extremely insulting. And so I had that video where they were doing that, or they were these Ukrainian the neo-Nazi battalion was doing that. They were cutting pork in front of the Quran. So Ukraine has never shown any sort of solidarity with any Muslim country whatsoever, like ever, besides the United States and Operation Iraqi Freedom. But of course, Zelensky is out there performing, right? And it must have been really awkward because I don't think any of these people wanted him there. To be honest, like he's not a real leader. He's a puppet, and everybody knows it except him.
The suppression of speech really fucking got amped up when it came to the COVID narratives, like we talked about. The biggest sin, I thought, more than anything, is that they were allowed to openly suppress speech, doubling it down with any suppression of anybody talking about elections that didn't talk their narratives of what's going on. Tripled down by what they did right into the Ukrainian situation, where they started deplatforming RT, started censoring people, started silencing people even more for talking about what's going on in Ukraine. So it was already on its third stage of suppression of speech, going all the way back to freaking Julian Assange. They've been doing this for quite some time. But that's the only reason why he gets to go there with this bad Batman voice, read a card that was written by the fucking State Department over there, try to put out this element. How many people do you still see to this day, fam, or hear from this day? You probably don't, because where you're at, but I do when I start having conversations with people. And I think this is something that Jose Vega and Diane Sayre pointed out with their videos right now. A lot of other people, including with the Schiller Institute or LaRouche people. I know you might have your beef with them, but who cares? They're doing amazing work today, and they're showing that people are still kind of fucking parroting, oh, Vladimir Putin wanted to recapture the old Soviet Union. This is what it is about. It's about territory. They're still telling that same fucking lie. And they get to tell that lie because they've suppressed so much information. They've suppressed so much speech. They've hidden so much content. They fucking deplatform, denigrate, smear, demonetize any type of truth that's coming on what's going on over there, fam. And that's why they're still getting to put this fucking bullshit on there and have Zelensky read this bullshit narrative from the jump.
Yeah.
From the jump. He is a puppet. He is a cokehead. You know what I'm saying? He is not a real leader. A lot of people know it. But once again, Americans so propagandized that they can pull away, they can pull this shit off still.
Yeah. And on that note, just to close off this section and the show, in Russia, you have the Duginists, who are like followers of Alexander Dugin, the communists, who are communists, but old school communists. Communists in Russia are very socially conservative. The Soviet Union was socially conservative. They were non-religious, but they were not as socially liberal with drugs or anything like that. And then you have the Putin types that are more like similar socially conservative, but capitalists, right? They have like somewhat of a good opinion on capitalism. You have all these three groups sort of like in unison in order to protect Russia. And a plethora of little small groups in between there, but they all agree on one thing, and they agree on the fact that NATO is waging a war against Russia, And if Russia does not stop them at this point, they will do as they have planned, as they have said for decades and decades, break up Russia into smaller territories. That would be basically finishing what the plan was with the Soviet Union. Because if you recall, all these CIS nations were like, Armenia, Azerbaijan, all of these nations, they were part of the Soviet Union, including Ukraine. And when the Soviet Union fell, they were able to break them up into little groups. And a lot of these little groups then became a part of the European society. And so that has been the method. So the Hitler-esque figure that is actually spreading and trying to conquer all of the land is NATO and the organization and what it represents. And so Russians do agree on that. Why? Well, because a lot of them have gone to Ukraine and they have seen. One in particular recently told me he saw how his grandmother could not speak Russian in Ukraine because they would go and either kill you or beat you up if you spoke Russian. And that was happening a long time ago. This is nothing new. This isn't a lie. A lot of these people, all these people aren't lying. This is what's happening. And the lie is what's being fed to the American public, getting people like Zelensky on stages, getting, some of these people with their fascist symbols, trophies at Disney events. That's the lie. But everything that you're not hearing, that's the truth.
Well, it's what goes for the goose is good for the gander, right? The conservatives right now, Phantom, I'm speaking at this event called Rebels for a Cause on June 3rd and 4th. I've asked to have a debate or panel or with Owen Schroyer, who works for Infowars, Infowars.com, did some of the reporting on Brazil, which I thought was very inaccurate. Has also been at the border kind of talking about, look what's going on over here. A lot of populist right focus on what's going on at the border, but fed this lie and not listening and seeing what's going on with our foreign policy in these countries. Well, the same thing that happens over here with the left too as well. How long has that been a hotbed for Ukraine as far as when the West gets involved, NATO always pushing buttons since 1991? They understand that's a hotbed area which they can manipulate people over there, and they've manipulated people over in on the left now to think that Vladimir Putin is just invading, that this wasn't provoked, that this stuff hasn't been going on for years, ignoring our foreign policy. So if foreign policy is ignored historically on both sides, left and right, and they always try to handle the situation with this American lens on from what's going on today and not looking at their history, fam. And that's the big shame of what's going on in the Ukraine. That's the big shame of what's going on at the border. We need to take a look at our historic ventures and what we've been doing foreign policy wise when we go into these other countries and why we go into these other countries. They are very fascist. They want the corporations to control all the resources and to control everything that's going on, keep these other countries destabilized so they can extract those resources for pennies on the dollar. So how can you ignore America's history leading up to what's going on in Ukraine? How can you ignore America's history and present behavior when it comes to foreign policy? What's going on the border today? It's ridiculous. People need to open their eyes. Weapon spending has not gone down. You know what I'm saying? Fam, it's not going to go down. Military spending goes up every year. Well, what do you think that money goes to? It goes to maintain the empire around the world. The empire is doing what it's doing is leading to these causes of migration. It's leading to these causes of war. And that's what needs to be stopped. America's actions first before anything.
Yep. America's actions first. 100% fam. That's it.
Let's end on a good note over there where you're agreeing with me. So, guys, thank you so much for joining the show today. Thank you to all our Patreons and everything else. Thank you to Oz, Roaring Media, and all those lovely people over there for supporting us and engineering the show today, of course.
Yes, thank you.
All the ways to help us are down below. Fam, I'm going to release the Cuban video later on tonight, and that will be playing throughout the weekend. I got that event on the 27th of May, a week from tomorrow, fam, in Kingston, New York. I'll be speaking at an event with Gerald Celente and the man who is now the campaign manager for the RFK campaign. Dennis Kucinich will also be there. And then Rebels with a Cause, June 3rd and 4th. If you're in the Tennessee area, come hang out. Hook us up. If you want to get tickets, just hit me up and I'll help you out. That's it for today. For Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
and Oz on those ones and twos.
Combo out. Have a great weekend, guys.
Fam.